Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This is Friday with Fran, and I am one host, Shelley, and this she's on the other side of me now, is Fran. We switched things up today just to see if you were paying attention. Um, so I have background in special education as a teacher, and now I am working in special education as a IEP coach and a special education consultant and all kinds of things. And Fran has do you want to tell or do you want me to tell?
You can tell you do it very well.
Okay, thanks. Fran has raised two adults now, children who have both had different disabilities and ability levels. And she herself became someone with a disability several years ago. And so we just get together every Friday or as often as we can on Fridays, and we just chat about things related to special education. So today, what are we talking about, Fran?
Today we're just checking in and catching up, and schools have started,
It has. Yeah.
and there's so much that happens with school and the flurry of it, and then now what?
Right? Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So getting back into routines is really a big thing that happens at this time of the year. Um, my routine doesn't change anymore because I'm not full time teaching, but yours changed this year, but in a different way than it has for lots of years at this time of the
yes,
year. How is your routine different this year?
because I no longer have any students.
Yeah.
They've all aged out of school.
Yep. So it's a new routine from years past, but it's not a new routine because your routine probably didn't change much from summer to once school officially got back in session.
Right.
Yeah. So my schedule is the only thing that's different about now is now that because schools are back in, I also substitute on top of everything else that I do. And so I've been in the classroom a few times already this year.
Really?
And this morning was one of them. Um,
Okay.
was in a second grade classroom. And so that was fun. Hi, Mom.
Yay! Mom's back.
Yeah. And so yeah, just learning. And one of the things which, Fran, I guess I didn't tell you that I'm a surrogate parent now. I have 10 new children.
Really?
Yes, this many.
Okay. That's a lot.
It is a lot.
Would you like to elaborate on that, maybe?
Yes, I would. So I became an educational surrogate parent over the summer, went through a training, and what that allows me to do is be there for students who have special education needs within the school systems, but for different reasons, their guardians or their parents aren't accessible. And so not only have I been subbing and attending meetings for my clients, I've been attending meetings now as a parent. And I have to tell you, it is a totally different ball game.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like now I actually have to put into practice all of the things that I have suggested to parents since I've become a special education consultant. Um,
So have you made folders for all your surrogates?
I'm working on those, yes. Right now, it's really difficult, and I don't know if it will always be this way, but I don't know the kids. So far, my only introduction, so to speak, to them is on paper.
Okay.
So, and then all of them have moved into my area, which I don't know where my area starts and stops. I just know that the kids are in Illinois. And so they've all moved into these different school districts. And so we're doing what are called intake meetings right now. And in some cases, I've gotten to meet my child via the telephone because, excuse me, that's the only contact I've had with them. I haven't been able to go and meet them in person. And
Mm-hmm.
that's really strange for me. Um, And I'm going to rectify that. I just haven't had opportunity to do it yet because they're from many miles away from me in some cases. And so finding the time to go visit their facility or go visit them or their school. But yeah, it's been really like, I can't really do a parent input statement because I don't know anything, you know, and the schools don't have a lot of information. So I'm hoping as the year goes on, or as the years that I do this continues, that I will have opportunity to have the same students for a while so I can get to know them. But otherwise, yeah, I've attended meetings. And do you mind if I keep talking? I feel like I'm just like, it's all me right now.
You're just go for it.
Okay. So I've done a couple of lives actually after some of these meetings. I had one the other day where it was a very interesting situation. The student is visually impaired, but not totally blind. And the paperwork that I had received from the school was saying that they were pushing for this student to learn Braille, but that the student was really not interested in learning Braille. I reached out to a friend of mine who is visually impaired, and I was reading her the diagnosis that this student has, and it turns out it's the same exact vision impairment.
Wow.
And so I was asking her, you know, she's in her, I guess, her 40s. Honestly, I don't know how old she is. But I said, so, you know, they're wanting this student to learn Braille. And she says, don't do that, because I'm my age. My father is his age. My brother is his age. All of us have this exact same diagnosis, and none of us need Braille. There's, you know, so many other ways that you can make things bigger so that we can read them, because they're not totally blind. They can see some things. And so I had this whole thing like prepared. You know, I was like, and I said it at the meeting. I said, you know, for the student to learn Braille now when she doesn't need it, it would be like when I learned German in high school and I took 2 years of it. And then I never went to Germany until 10 years later. And then I couldn't remember anything because there was such a gap of time from when I learned it to when I needed it. And so the school, and this was a virtual call, the school says to the student, well, tell her how you feel about Braille. Just like that, like really snarky. And the student said, well, I don't really want to do it. And I mean, I was like prepared to do battle because I understood from the paperwork that the school was pushing it and the child wasn't. And so this teacher goes, well, that's why I didn't put a goal in there for that, because she doesn't want to use Braille. I was like, okay, you don't have to be snarky about it. It's not your life. But then any questions that I would ask the student during the meeting, because as I said, I haven't had a chance to meet these people beforehand, and yet I'm supposed to be representing their voice and helping make sure that they're getting the appropriate things in their IEPs. And if I would ask the student a question like, well, how do you feel about this goal? Or how do you think you learn, or whatever? And somebody on the staff, it wasn't always the same person, would say, well, remember we talked about this. Remember we had this discussion the other day. It was like they wouldn't let the student have.
Did you finally say, could you allow her to answer?
No, because I was getting this really strong vibe from them that nothing was going to change, and that this group was trying to get your attention. And so I was like, okay, I want to meet with the student, and then I'll call another IEP meeting after I have a chance to meet with the student and really get what the student really thinks, because I don't think even if the student had answered, if it was different than what the school was telling me, I don't think the person would have felt comfortable giving me a different answer.
Got it.
So I didn't want to put her on the spot like that. And as I said, the team was just really very strange. And I had my questions and I had sent them in ahead of time. And some of them they had answered via email, and others they wanted to talk about during the meeting. And one of the people, when I was asking my questions, said, "Didn't you get a draft copy of the IEP?" And I said, "Yes, I did." "Well, didn't you look it over?" I'm like, "Yeah, where do you think my questions are coming from?"
Mm-hmm.
And it was just
Do you
as
feel like, do you think they're feeling threatened by you coming on board, maybe?
I don't know.
Because they don't understand your purpose or role?
I think the school staff understands, because I think they've had surrogate parents before.
Okay.
I just don't know that they've had surrogate parents who have the kind of knowledge that I have
Right.
and ask the questions and don't just agree to everything and then sign off and give them permission to go ahead and do whatever. Because I was in a meeting yesterday for a different one of my new children, and the consensus then was all about the program. They had written the IEP, sent me the draft copy. I had written down my questions, and unfortunately I wasn't able to get them my responses within a decent amount of time for them to really look over it, and that's my own fault. And so I told them when I sent them, if they couldn't get to them, I'm fine. I was fine discussing them at the meeting. And the goals were written for the program. And I said, the goals are supposed to be written to benefit the individual. Well, they do, but that's how our program is set up. I'm like, no, we need to, does this person need this goal? Because if you're teaching something to everybody, even if it's in a special education room under a special education umbrella setting, if you're teaching it to everybody, it may not be appropriate for each individual, and you might have to change it. You're not individualizing it if you're still doing it for 10 people and you haven't thought about what each one of those 10 people needs. And it took quite a while for us to figure out how to fix the problem, because the staff kept saying, well, this is what all the kids get. I'm like, I understand, but we don't need to have a goal, because goals are supposed to be specially designed instruction. If you're teaching it to everybody, it's not specially designed instruction for that one student. And what I eventually figured out, and what helped us to, I think, get over the hump, is it was a transition student, an age of transition for the student. And it was one of the transition goals. So for anybody who isn't aware of that, in the IEP, transition goals are those goals that are written to help the students outside of high school and really start to prepare them for life outside of the school setting. The entire IEP process does that overall, but when they hit the high school ages, they're really supposed to be specific and saying, yes, this covers independent living. This goal covers employment. This goal covers further education. And the goal that I was having the most difficulty with, and said, there's no point in having this goal for her, because it's what you're doing for everyone and it's going to be covered in a class, was a transition goal. And so finally it dawned on me, and I said, so you're insisting that this goal has to stay because it's it's one of your transition goals. And they were like, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, that's fine. I get that part, but let's make it appropriate for the student. Oh, and it was like, okay, but I still am not 100% sure that they totally got what I was saying, because they kept referring to, well, this is what the program does. This is how the program works. This is what, It's not about the program. It's about the person.
Right. Wow. So you have put on another hat.
I have, because 5, this many wasn't enough. Yeah. But I'm starting to have an even slightly better feeling and understanding of the parent role, because that meeting, the first one that I talked about, where the school just did not seem to want to listen to me, I was very intimidated.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, how am I intimidated? I do this every time, every week. And this is my life. And I'm an expert in this. And why do I feel intimidated? But their attitude towards me definitely intimidated me. And I felt like I was being bullied a little bit, and the student was being bullied a little bit, because it was, well, don't you know? Don't you already understand this? Well, we've already talked about this. So
Right.
Did you have experiences like that?
Well, I want to show your mom. It's a light bulb, maybe.
Yeah.
What they needed.
Yeah.
But did I? Yeah. In the beginning, because I didn't know better.
Right.
I was told this is the way it was. And it was very frustrating, because I, as a parent, knew it wasn't going to work.
Right.
And I kept telling them, this goal that you have written will not work. Well, it has to work. It's age appropriate. And I said, it may be age appropriate for a typically developing child, but it's not age appropriate for my son. Well, it's going to stay in there. I said, well, then it's only going to be worked on in your classroom. I am not participating in it, and do not expect me to contribute towards it. Those were my words.
Mm-hmm.
That goal got dropped within the first calendar, because they came to realize that, wow, this was really not appropriate for him.
Yeah. Well, thankfully they dropped it, because some people will get so stubborn that they still won't.
Well, it got really expensive for them.
Oh, there was money involved. Okay.
Because I wasn't contributing toward it.
Right.
Because I thought it was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
So, but thankfully, as time went on, it was before we were supposed to be getting the draft IEPs.
Mm-hmm.
I did have teachers give me the IEPs ahead of time. So, hey, will you look these over, see if these goals seem reasonable? Is this what you really want? And so I really appreciated that.
Yeah.
And it gave me time to go, I don't know. Or, yeah, that's really good. I wouldn't have thought of that.
Right. Yeah. And that was including you as part of the process, because that's what you're supposed to be as the parent. You're supposed to be part of the process. And it's not working that way in many, many school districts. And I sometimes think that the school districts think if the parent sits in the room or sits on the phone or sits on the video conference, whatever way they attend the meeting, that is their participation. That is them being an equal member and being included. And that is not it. I mean, if you think about it, if you say that, sitting at a table is being an equal member, and you don't have anything to say. I had a comparison that I was going to use, and it just escaped my brain. So I don't know what I was going to use as my comparison, but you're not a team if you're not giving input that's heard. No, every team works better if everyone is willing to listen when someone has an opinion or a suggestion.
This is what just came to mind as you were sharing that. It's a team. It's like putting everybody out on a football field, and everybody's fully equipped and padded up, and you're standing there in just your undergarments, and you're expected to compete effectively and efficiently and to the same degree as everybody else on the field.
Yeah. Yep. And run the plays when you haven't been given the plays ahead of time to practice them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's funny that you used that example, because I did use that in an introduction one time to a talk that I was giving to leaders in Illinois in different industries. And I went through this whole, like, here's team A, here's team B. And I did, team A talks, and that, at the beginning of the game, before the game starts, the referee comes out and says, each of your captains now has to go to the other team. And the one team was very welcoming and talked to the person and was, like, hey, where do you want to stand or where do you want to sit? And the other team was like, you sit there, you stand here. If the person asked any questions, they were like, well, you're just gonna have to figure it out as we go, or they'd maybe explain it once and, move on. And I had like this whole elaborate, story developed. And then I asked, which team would you think it was going to be more successful, and which team would you prefer to be on? And it was the one where everybody was included and everyone collaborated, and, choices were given and discussions were had, and, support was provided. And then I said, okay, well, sadly, most schools setting IEP meetings seem to be the other team.
Yeah. And you know what I found?
What?
Originally, when I started into the education system with my kiddos, it was just me going to these IEPs.
Mm-hmm.
And then eventually I started having someone else tag along. And wow, things opened up and communication started happening more because there was a witness.
Right. Hi, Deborah. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, Deborah.
Deborah was one of my guests on #NoLimits.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, she runs an organization called Dominique Cares. It's down in Texas.
Cool. I'll have to go hunt that one up and watch.
Yeah.
So yeah, that for me it was having a teammate
Mm-hmm.
that started to even the playing field.
Right. And you didn't bring an advocate, you didn't bring a coach, you just brought another person. Right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it is strange how I don't necessarily think that any of them, maybe some of them did consciously, like, oh, there's somebody else here. It's like this subconscious thing that their brain goes, oh, there's somebody else listening. It's not just going to be this parent who might say good things or bad things about us now.
Right. And then so in the beginning it was a friend, and then it's been a friend. I've had a friend, but she also happens to be in the special ed field. And then one time I had a meeting where I had a couple of people come and they were all well educated in the special ed field. And it was amazing, that meeting, how free and how they listened. And yeah.
Uh-huh. It does make a difference. And I don't necessarily, huh?
It makes me sad that that progression only happened because, goodness gracious, sorry, he's kind of needy today. That progression only happened because of those that I brought alongside me.
Yeah. And I don't want to say schools are bad and that all, that they're doing this intentionally. I just don't think it's thought about how these situations are perceived from the parent side of the meeting. And I do say it's a team, and I did specify side there because the school section often sits together and then the parent is kind of all by themselves at the end of a table or on the other side of a table, or but even if it's not that, I mean, the school part of the team has had discussions, because that's what teachers and people who work together do. They have discussions about their workday. Now, in a school setting, that workday also, I mean, it involves children and it involves people with IEPs. And so those conversations happen. And yet the parent isn't privy to those conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of things that come to the table before the parent arrives that aren't shared with the parent. And so if the parent asks any questions, I think sometimes the school forgets that they weren't involved with all of the stuff that comes to the table before the meeting.
Right.
And then there's, unfortunately, you know, those places too where it's, you know, like I said, they think your meaningful participation is you sitting there and listening and nodding your head, or just sitting there and listening, and then they ask you if you have any questions. Excuse me. And a lot of people aren't able to formulate a question at an IEP meeting because of how overwhelming it is to have all of these people from, you know, these people that I think the general public thinks teachers are people of authority. And school administrators are people of authority, even though you're not in the classroom. But when you go to a school, you're like, okay, you're the expert. Like when you go to the doctor is, you know, the expert.
Mm-hmm.
But if the doctor doesn't have your input, the doctor can't do their job to the best of their ability because they don't have all the information. It's the same thing with an IEP, in my opinion. The parent brings a lot of information to the table that if teachers and school districts were set up an environment that was very welcoming and warm and inclusive and collaborative, more of that information could be shared and everybody could have a better meeting, write a better IEP, and then the student is the one who's going to benefit. And that's where we're supposed to be doing. That's the student is the one that we're doing this for.
Right. And I think I don't want to say like all of the times that we had IEPs it was bad, because it really wasn't. It got better.
Right.
But I think it goes back to someone had told me, bring a picture of your son.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did, to the original IEP way back when he was a toddler. And I set it on the table, and it was, you know, the standard size.
Mm-hmm.
And I plunked it there, and I think it helped keep us focused. That this is why we were there.
Right. I think that's an excellent idea, because it's not about my pride or your pride or what, you know, that we want to win the argument. And I at the meeting yesterday, I do think that the special ed teacher, and she's someone that I know, I think she felt offended because she explained something to me, and then she said, and if you think I can do a better job, please let me know. And there was just this tiny hint of that she was hurt by what I said, that she felt like she had to defend what she was doing. And that wasn't my intention. But I think as teachers, especially in the last many years, teachers are not respected the way that they used to be respected. They don't get the support from families that they used to get. And some of that is warranted. I mean, unfortunately, there have been bad teachers, bad school districts, bad situations, but to throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, and say all teachers and all public education is bad is not true. And I mean, I think both sides can work. The parents and the teachers can work together.
Right.
And it shouldn't be like this. I mean, the best setting is this, because, you know, it's better for everybody's mental health, and it's certainly better for the students to learn as much as they can when they are feeling comfortable and they don't feel like mom and dad are against the school or against the teacher, or that, you know, the parents think that the teacher isn't worthy. I know this doesn't affect you now. I sent out something on my social media the other day, and I've had many teachers reach out to me and thank me for saying this. There is a huge shortage of teachers, of substitutes, of paraprofessionals, of bus drivers. And for those who are showing up every day this year, I put a social media post out and said, thank them, because at least they're there for your child. Even if you don't like the person, even if your time so far has not been fabulous, there's still an adult or adults showing up every day trying. Oh, there it is. Yeah, because it's super, super tough and stressful to be a teacher right now. I mean, there are school districts that teachers are doing, B and C times the number of students that they normally would have had, because no one else is there to do it. And they're there because whatever their reason is. So
Right.
I've had some teachers be like, thank you. That's really all I would, if I got that, that would lift my spirits so much. And we don't do it to be thanked, but we also don't do it to get screamed at all the time and blamed and be unsupported.
Right. And I mean, I would send emails or texts if I just saying, hey, I really appreciate what you're doing, just randomly throughout the school year. Or, that was a really neat idea you just had, or if I was struggling, hey, do you have any ideas? I think it comes down to communication and support, knowing that support needs to go both ways.
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. So those of you who are listening, so Deborah, I know you've had a daughter go through the special education system. So if you're still with us, if you have any comments, that's very true. That is absolutely true. They are there for your children. They are not there for the fabulous salary. That is absolutely 100% true. And that's the other thing. I mean, so often we hear, we being teachers, oh, you get the summers off. Must be nice to not have to work during the summer. Well, I actually did some calculations recently, and there's been a study that triggered me doing this calculation. And it said that the average teacher, this is the average teacher. So that means that there are some working way more than this and some working way less than this. The average teacher works 50 hours a week. So I took that number and I multiplied it out by the number of weeks there are in a school year. And if you happen to know what the number of hours that an average person works per year, there was a difference, but it was a very minor difference. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, we might get the summers off, but we're also having to do professional development. And those hours that were calculated for the average teacher were done in January and February. So those are the parts of the year where, maybe there's not as much going on. But, getting classrooms ready, grading papers, I mean, all that stuff, like I said, and then the professional development happens over the summer. So there's a lot more that goes into teaching than many people take into account.
For sure. My mom was a teacher, so I lived it.
Yeah.
I remember her making supper and then grading papers while eating supper.
Yep. Well, you can there a little bit. We could bring you on camera. I could send you the invitation and you could come on camera with us. And we could just make this the Deborah show today.
And as you've been sharing, I've been thinking, I think we should revisit preparing and having an IEP and maybe having a Friday of Fran with that again.
Okay.
Okay. Because we haven't done it in a long time. Have we?
No. You're right. I don't think we've done it maybe since the beginning of last school year.
To kick off the school year and
yeah.
I don't know. That was just one of those random thoughts that I had.
You know, I still have my notes from last week. I never made up the graphic and put it out there.
It's okay.
I've becoming a surrogate educational parent or educational surrogate parent kind of has me a little overwhelmed because, like I said, I've got 10 and everybody wants to have the meetings now. And so then I'm reading all their IEPs and commenting, you know, back to each of the different school districts and then having phone call meetings of, well, when are we going to, you know, set this up and do this and the back and forth of all of that. And then because it's the beginning of the school year, my clients are in need. And then I've got professional development that I've been working on and doing. Christmas is going to be so much fun this year. Why? Oh, because you have 10 extra children. 10 extra grandchildren. My children, your grandchildren. Yeah. And they're all different ages. I've got
yeah, that's true.
I've got 3 or 4 in high school and a couple in middle school and a couple in the primary grades. So yeah, it's all kinds of different. 10 more kids, she says. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, the first one of the educational surrogates that I got, I was like, oh boy, I might have to be more than an educational surrogate. I may end up with some of these kids in my house. I've had the opportunity of being in the space of amazing teachers that give so much, but there are so many factors that go into it. You are right. Some teachers spend a lot of hours behind the scenes. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think about the teachers that I worked with. I mean, I spent a lot of time as a special education teacher for sure, coming up with different activities and curriculums and, you know, what to do to teach my students. But like my junior high teachers and my high school teacher friends who taught subjects where they might have long papers to read because that's what they assigned their students. I mean, my gosh, the amount of time that it has to take to go through all of those essays and then to be able to grade them all the same and not be too hard on the beginning ones or too hard on the end ones, you know, and have that same point of reference all the way through. Because I think at some point your brain probably just automatically starts comparing to the previous ones that you've already read. And then, you know, you come up with your grade that way versus I bet at the beginning you have a standard that you're thinking it should be. And so then, you know, the students are graded that way. We must be careful not to paint all teachers with the same brush, especially during COVID with the lack of resources and lack of staffing. Absolutely. And I'm going to I'm going to flip that around. We also can't paint all parents with the same brush.
Right.
And all students with the same brush. Oh, sorry. We both clicked it up there at the same time. We're not making excuses. This is the harsh reality and no one wins. Yeah. And for sure, it's the student who is lost the most. And that's absolutely heartbreaking to me.
So I think that's why it's so important that, like, you're doing what you're doing. You've added another hat. Or that the teacher that takes the time to figure out why someone that was excelling all of a sudden isn't even turning in homework and just stops to say, hey, I'm here. What's going on? the
Right.
teachers that notice the differences in our students. And as Deborah said, it's so much goes on behind the scenes and hours. So what
Yeah.
happens in the classroom? So yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes it's the subtle differences that are the biggest impact. And I understand, it's difficult when you have a few hundred students that you see, those teachers that they have a group of students and then that class leaves and then it's a completely different group of students and then that class leaves and then it's another completely different group of students and that happens all day long. I understand that, but I still think that you can have that relationship with every one of your students. Just make eye contact with them. Say their name in a positive way. Some kids never hear their name spoken unless they're in
Mhm.
trouble. And it's incredible the difference saying someone's name in a happy voice versus an angry voice makes for that person hearing their name.
Right.
Or just recognizing, like, oh, hey, I think they're wearing the same clothes today that they wore yesterday. Or you know I mean, there's really a lot that goes into teaching. I was very fortunate that I was able to have relationships with students that were not my students. And I still see those students today and they're like, hey, Mrs. Kino, how's it going? And so often Violet will have been with me when I would have those interactions. And she's like, well, who was that? And like, well, it was just, a student from one of the schools, or they were, so, and eventually she stopped asking, but it's been amazing. This is true, Mom, but there's a lot of places it's really sad they won't allow that anymore. It's because it's not true for everybody. And rather than upset somebody or have inappropriate touching, they've thrown the baby out with the bathwater again, and we have this bad habit of all or nothing, it seems like.
Or as Deborah said, we're painting everybody with the same brushstroke.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So it's, yeah. I mean, like I said, I think it's possible to build a connection, make a connection. Maybe saying build a relationship is the wrong way to phrase it, but make a connection with every student.
Write it down.
Make a connection.
Make one of your little cool graphics. And we can translate that even into our everyday life. Make a connection with those around you.
Mm-hmm.
I think it comes back to the intentionality. Being intentionally in the moment where you are, rather than already to your next stop, your next whatever in your day, but being there where you are now.
Mm-hmm. Someone gave me, I think, one of the most beautiful compliments ever recently, and it was that I see every person that I interact with. And that I just thought that's awesome that I do it and that somebody saw it and recognized it.
That's cool.
And yeah, and mostly the comment was truly directed towards children, that I see every child that I interact with. And I truly see each one as an individual. But yeah, I mean, it applies to everybody, but it was more about my ability to see every child. So,
okay. I like that. Can I share what happened when I was in the hospital this past surgery?
Please do. Yes.
the nurse that was there when I came up from recovery, and I could tell it was a busy time. And so one time he came in, I said, I really appreciate what you're doing. How are you doing? How's your day going? And he just stopped and he looked at me and he teared up. And I was like, uh-oh. And he goes, I have never had anybody ask me how I'm doing. And it made me sad because this person has been a nurse for a really long time and no one has ever asked him that. And it was, and he goes, can I give you a hug? Did you really mean it? I said, I wouldn't have asked it if I didn't mean it. How are you doing? And so it was just that brief moment, and he went on because he was busy.
Yeah.
But for me, it's been an intention since my stroke, an intentionality about checking in with the people that are helping me, the people that are checking me out at the register, the person that rolls you out of the hospital, just whatever. You just being intentional about checking in with them. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they give you a look because they're like, what is this person wanting? And then sometimes they truly appreciate that moment.
Yeah. I'm that person that wonders, why is somebody being so nice to me? Isn't that sad? When you really think about it, that we're not nice to people enough, that when someone is nice, we are a little skeptical. But
if you do it enough, you're going to see a lot of the interactions with the, you're going to get a lot of people going, wow, someone really cared enough to ask.
Yeah. Yeah. You've inspired me with that over the years. I tried to be more cognizant of saying, how are you today? And I mean, I do it anyway, but like to be very intentional with it. Like it's not just that, oh, how are you doing today? And you expect them to say fine and then you keep walking. It's like really making eye contact with them and saying, how are you today? Like, no, really, I mean it. Like, don't just say fine and expect me to walk on. Because it is. We all need more kindness in the world.
Yeah. Ooh, this one got heavy.
Well, it is, but not. I mean, we're talking about being kind, and one of the things that I appreciated in the school that I was in this morning is they have like a little jar, I guess it was, and there's all these different little ideas in this jar, and it was what's our kindness challenge for today? And yesterday's, because it was still written, was give a compliment to 3 or 4 people, and today's was just say good morning or good afternoon to that same number of people. And I just thought that was a really neat thing to do to, they don't get a reward. I mean, the teacher asked, how many of you did yesterday's challenge? And kids raised their hand and, she was like, that's awesome. And, but I mean, they didn't get candy. They didn't get stickers. They didn't get, other than that's awesome or good job, or I don't know what she said, but, and then they were eager to do today's challenge. As soon as she said it, of course, they started turning around and looking at everybody. Good morning. Good morning.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I mean, it's that simple thing of giving him a high five or a hug. And I really like that your nurse asked you before he hugged you. Because some people don't like that. And, for some people it's trauma triggering.
Right.
And, so just being careful with that sort of thing. I'm a big hugger. And, if I see anybody of you that ever watch this in person and you want to hug me, you go right ahead. I'm a hugger, but.
I never knew that about you.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Until just now?
Uh-huh.
Really?
We've only hugged this many times.
Really? Well, I mean, we don't see each other all that often, but that seems strange in all of the times that we have seen each other that I've only hugged you once. That can't be right. Well, I guess I'll have to be sure to remedy that from now on.
It's okay. Oh, hi, Alex.
Hey, awesome. Thanks for joining us, Alex. You almost missed us completely. We do have to head out here in a few minutes, but we've still got about this many minutes to go. So
Okay.
we've been, as a recap for Alex, we've been talking about schools in session, and we started talking about how busy I am and routines, and then we got into being kind and ways to be kind, and how sad it is that when someone is kind to you, you're skeptical because it's not the norm.
And then in the midst of it all, we talked about educational surrogates and teachers and how to build the teachers up.
Yeah, because they really need that right now.
For sure. You know what I used to do?
What?
It wasn't for teachers, but I used to send a text out to people in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
It was the daily verse of the day from the Bible. Mm-hmm. And along with it, I would a lot of times say, how may I pray for you? Or how are you doing? Or just good morning with that person's name.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it for a really long time, like all the calendars.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just stopped. And I had somebody reach out to me the other day, and they said, I didn't realize how important that had become to brightening my day till it ceased to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh. So, I sent out for like a couple of the alphabets at least every morning. And so if it made a difference in a person's life, then it was all worth it.
Yep.
And so just sending out a good morning to somebody or a text, hey, just thinking of you. Because in today, we're all muddling through in some degree or another. And don't assume that even if someone has this strong front, that they're really doing okay.
Yeah. Yep. I know. I had gotten those texts. And it's interesting that you said that because I just realized that a few Fridays ago, like, she doesn't do that anymore. And then I was trying to think how long it has been since I had gotten one of those from you. But we text other things now. So I guess I just didn't.
And I know it was around my birthday.
Yeah. And and I know these things and I don't always follow through with them either. So, if you're watching this in the replay, or those of you who are with us right now, we're not perfect when we give these suggestions. They're as much suggestions for ourselves, or each other, as they are for anyone who watches. Because I don't know how many people I have in my phone, but I bet I don't message all of them even once a year. I bet there are many of them who I don't message even once a year. So I need to change that.
Because it's important to know you're not alone.
Yeah. That is for sure. And we say that all the time, almost every episode. This is huge. We have a t-shirt hoodie with this on the front. Kindness, loaning someone your strength instead of reminding them of their weakness. Oh, I do love that. Oh my
gosh, I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
That is way cool. Yeah. So it's definitely something that we can all do, and hopefully get some more people smiling and have a little bit of sunshine in each person's day, and passing it on. It'll be he's so cute how he just lays his head there like, oh, Mom.
He's
That
a
could be our
snuggle bunny.
kindness challenge
Yeah.
between now and next Friday with Fran. How many people did you reach out to that you had not spoken to or texted in a long time?
Let's do it. Let's check it in.
All right. That's the challenge. Okay. So Alex, Deborah, Mom, Fran, Shelley. I don't know if anyone else is watching. They didn't put their name in, so they're not going to now because they don't want to be included in the challenge. But that's our challenge. Text some people or write to some people or send an email or pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, I just wanted to let you know I was thinking about you today. And no major group texts. You can't just do it to like 10 people all at once.
No, these are all individuals. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. Oh, thank you, Deborah. That would be awesome. Yeah, did you have I know you had something that you normally do in August, and we talked about me maybe coming down, and I don't know if you had it or not, but I know I didn't come down for it if you had it. So but see, now we have our number went up. So we're doing a kindness challenge for anybody who just joined between now and the next Friday with Fran, that you reach out to several people that you have not spoken to in a while and just randomly reach out and say, how are you doing? I'm thinking about you. Hope you have a good day. We didn't have it. Aw, sorry. I forget, it was some sort of like vendor fair, resource fair thing that you normally had in August, I think. So I had thought about heading down to Texas. I actually just had someone else ask me, they're like, hey, do you want to come down? We're doing trunk or treat. And I'm like, I don't live there. But if I did, I would be out there. So yeah, so we're not alone. And like I said, we say that, but putting actions to those words means a whole lot. So make sure you're reaching out to people. And if you haven't been reached out to, then the grammar on that, I was like, how is that worded? Then reach out to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Reach out to us.
Yeah.
You can reach out to us on my Facebook page. And if you don't want me and you want Fran, you can say, send this to Fran, and I will send it to Fran. Because it's on my page that these go out. But we need to fix that. We might need to broadcast these on your page. On your personal page. What?
No, how do you? Okay. All right.
All right, well, but we need to go.
All right.
So wrap it up for us.
Be kind. Share your joy, because someone's going to need it.
Yes. Loan someone your kindness. Wait, I did that totally wrong. Loan someone your strength instead of reminding them of their weakness.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. Deborah, it was nice to have you for the first time, and hopefully you'll be able to join us more often. And we appreciate all of you that joined us and are watching this in the replay. Take that kindness challenge, and we will see you next week. Bye.